Okay, good morning, everyone. So our session will begin, and please, for presenters can open the camera. Okay. Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the parallel session at the International Conference on Advancement in Data Science, E-Learning and Information System, or we can call as ICADE 2026. My name is Hilda Nuraliza, and I'm honored to serve as the moderator for this session. And today we have a series of remarkable presentation exploring information system, governance, adoption, and risk. Before we begin, allow me to take a presence for all presenters to make sure that all presenters are here. Okay, for the first, Mrs. Kilyah Nafisa from Telkom University is here.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Okay, next, Mr. Stefanus Disano from Telkom University is here.
Yes, I'm attend.
Okay. Okay, next, Mr. Muhammad Arifandi from Universitas Indonesia.
Yes, I'm here.
And the last one is Mr. Rahmat Fauji from Telkom University.
Okay, I'm here.
Thank you for your confirmation. And so, ladies and gentlemen, let me outline the format for this session. Each presenter will have 10 minutes to deliver their presentation. At the 8th minute, a reminder will appear that there are 2 minutes left. At the 10 minute, I will state that the time is up. I kindly ask all attendees to hold their question until the Q&A session after each presentation. If a presenter is not ready to present within 1 minute of their scheduled time, we will proceed with the next presenter. The presenter who was not ready will be rescheduled to present at the end of the session after all other presenters have finished. During other presenter session, please mute your microphone unless permitted to speak. We urge all participants to maintain a conducive atmosphere during the conference session so that each presenter can participate comfortably and optimally in the discussion. This aims to create an environment that supports the overall smoothness and success of the event. Exiting and re-entering the room during the session is not allowed without prior permission from the moderator. Please ensure you stay in room for the entire duration of the session to support all presenters. Now, without further ado, let us welcome our presenter, Ms. Kilyah Nafisa from Telkom University, who will present a paper titled The Influence of Technostress on ChatGPT Adoption in Gen Z, Learning a Diffusion of Innovation or DOI Perspective. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Ms. Kilyah Nafisa. You have 10 minutes. Please and time are welcome.
I'm sorry, may I share screen or the commit share screen the page?
Yeah, your slide is shown in screen.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Ilana Fisa, and I'm here today to present our research titled The Influence of Technostress on ChatGPT Adoption in Gen Z Learning, a Diffusion of Innovation Perspective. This research was conducted together with my co-authors, Mr. Muhardi and Mr. Haryasena, from the Information Systems Study program at Telkom University, Bandung, Indonesia. We hope this presentation gives you some useful insight into how AI tools like ChatGPT are being adopted and sometimes resisted by today's students. Okay, here is a quick overview of what I will cover today. We will start with the introduction, then I will walk you through our methodology, and final, I will share our conclusion and direction for future research. So let's get started. Let me start with a question. How many of you have used ChatGPT to help with your work or studies in the past month? So it is no surprise if most of you have. ChatGPT has become one of the most widely used AI tools in the world, and Indonesia is no exception. In fact, as of April 2025, ChatGPT is the most visited AI platform in Indonesia, with around 74% of surveyed respondents reporting that they are active user, and this is a massive number. For Generation Z, those born roughly between 1995 and 2007, ChatGPT feels natural. They grow up with technology and they are always looking for smarter, faster ways to handle academic tasks like writing essay, searching for reference, or understanding complex topics. But here is where it gets interesting. Even though Gen Z is digitally fluent, the widespread adoption of complex AI system can actually create psychological pressure, what researchers call by technostress. So, technostress will happen when a user feels overwhelmed, frustrated, or anxious because technology fails to meet their expectation, is too complicated to understand, or behave unpredictably. So, our research question is, how do technostress and the characteristic of ChatGPT as an innovation together shape whether Gen Z student choose to adopt it? To answer it, to answer this question, we turn to the diffusion of innovation or DOI theory, a well-established framework for understanding how and why people adopt new technology. So, now let's talk about how we design this study. Our target group is Generation Z individuals, student aged between 17 and 29, living on Java Island, Indonesia. We choose Java strategically because it has the largest student population and the highest AI adoption rates in the country. We use a quantitative approach. It means we collected numerical data through a structural online questionnaire using Google Form with a 4-point Likert scale ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. NI questionnaire measured a latent variable, which are concepts that cannot be measured directly but are captured through a set of indicators. These variables are relative advantage, understandability, trialability, observability, functionality, complexity, compatibility, and ChatGPT adoption itself. To analyze the data, we use PLSM or partial least square structural equation modeling through the SmartPLS software. PLSM is powerful statistical technique that let us test the relationship between this latent variable at the same time. So, to give you a clearer picture of how this study was conducted, here is our research method stage. The process goes through 4 stages. We start from identification, where we define this research problem, review existing literature, and selected our variables, and then data collection stage, where we distribute our online questionnaire and build it the integration model. Next, data analysis stage, where we evaluated both the measurement model and the structural model using SmartPLS. Finally, the results flow into the decision-making stage. So the entire process flow in a clockwise loop. We had 10 hypotheses in total, but let me break it down into 3 simple groups so it's easier to follow. First group, we believe that functionality, meaning how will ChatGPT actually work, affect 2 things: how useful people think it is and how complicated they think it is. In short, when ChatGPT gives wrong answer or keeps failing, people stop seeing it as helpful and it starts to feel more complicated than it really is. Second group, we believe understandability, how easy it is to understand how ChatGPT works, make people more likely to try it, feel like it fits their habits, and notice when others are benefiting from it too. So basically, once you understand something, you are more willing to test it out and more likely to spot its value. Last group, we also test whether there's key factor: usefulness, simplicity, fit with habits, ability to try it, and visible benefits directly affect whether someone actually adopt ChatGPT or not. So overall, this model is simply trying to answer one thing: what pushes people toward using ChatGPT and what pushes them away. So now let's move to our result. We collected data from 51 respondents across Java Island as a pretest to validate our measurement model before scaling up. In terms of demographic, there were 28 females and 23 males, mostly aged between 17 and 23 years old. And you can see in the pie chart our respondent coming from all province on the island of Java, with the most from West Java province. And you can see at the slide that was a picture of the model that we create. So on this slide, you can see two tables. From the first shows validity result and the reliability result. Let's walk you through what this number mean. Simply, looking at the validity table first in the left left side, each row represents one indicator for one survey question. The number in the outer loading column tell us how strongly does this question actually connect to the concept it is measuring. The rule is very simple. Anything above 0.7 is acceptable. As you can see, most of our indicators passed this threshold. However, two indicators did not, for RAD1 and with a loading of 0.641 and for UND1 with a loading of 0.696. These were highlighted in the table and removed from the model. The column on the right, AVE or AVE, tells us whether each variable as a whole is capturing its concept well enough. The threshold here is above 0.5. Good news, all 8 variables passed. This means every variable in our model is measuring what it is supposed to measure. Now, we look at the right side in the reliability table. This table answers a different question. If the same respondent filled out our survey again, would they give consistent answer? We check this using two metrics, with current batch alpha and composite reliability, and both need to be above 0.7. Every single contract in our model exceeds this threshold. To summarize both tables in one sentence, our measurement instrument is both valid and reliable, and we are confident it is capturing the right things consistently. So now let's look at the inner model result. The most important number here is the R-square value for ChatGPT adoption with 0.766. This is classified as substantial, meaning our model explains 76.6% of the variance in whether students adopt ChatGPT or not. That is a very strong result for a pretest with just 51 respondents. And other key R-square values you can see in the table. One thing worth noting about complexity, unlike the other variable, this one works in reverse. The questionnaire are designed so an R-square of 0.034 score is actually a good sign, meaning students do not find ChatGPT particularly complex to use. So here is not a weakness. In other words, students generally find ChatGPT easy enough to use regardless of other condition, and that is a positive result. So what can we conclude from all of this? First, we start with 32 indicators across 8 variables. After validity testing, 30 indicators passed and 2 were removed for RND1 and the UND1, both failing to meet the 0.7 loading threshold. Second, the structural model explains 76.6% of the variance in ChatGPT adoption, confirming that this integrated TOEIC and Technostress framework is a strong predictor to adoption behavior among the Gen Z. Last, the study confirmed that although variables except the functionality are the key positive drivers of adoption, while functionality issues remain the primary source of Technostress. And for the future research, first, scale of data. This study was
Time is up. Okay.
okay. Thank you. That's all my presentation, and I'm sorry for the mistake. I'm happy if any question to take any question of you guys. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Heliana Visa, for that insightful presentation. And we will now open the floor for question. If you have a question, please raise your hand before speaking. Kindly state your name and affiliation before asking your question. Okay, Mr. Stefanus, you can open your mic and then state your name and affiliation.
Okay, thank you, moderator, and congratulations on the presentation. I'm Stefanus Desarno from Telkom University. I have a question about how you treat complexity as a variable. You mentioned that complexity variable is something reverse, meaning that lower scores are actually reflect better results, and that small r square values should be interpreted as positive rather then as weak results. My question is, can you clarify the theoretical justification for treating complexity this way? And is there a risk that interpreting a low R square as a good sign might be perceived as post hoc reasoning to explain statically weak result?
Okay, thank you for your question, Mr. Stefanus. So, Ms. Hilya, would you like to address this?
Okay, I will answer. So thank you for the question, Mr. Jesano. That is a very important critic. So I appreciate the opportunity to clarify this. The reserve coding of complexity is not something we introduced arbitrarily. After seeing the weak R square, it is grounded in the original diffusion of innovation theory by Rogers, where complexity is conceptually defined as the degree of difficulty in understanding and using an innovation. By design, our indicator items for complexity were expressed to capture difficulty. It means higher agreement reflects higher perceived difficulty, which is theoretical accepted to relate negatively to adoption. So the low R square of value with the value 0.034 specifically tell us that the variance in how difficult students find ChatGPT to use is not strongly explained by the exogenous variable in our model. This result indicated that ChatGPT complexity level is considered low among all Gen Z respondents. So we generally find the technology highly intuitive. However, we acknowledge that this conclusion needs to be sustained with qualitative data or a larger sample size in future research for more accurate result in the future. That's all my answer. Is that answering your question?
Yes, that's very clear answer, Miss Kilya. Thank you.
Maybe we have 2 minutes. Maybe we can open for one question more from Mr. Ari. Okay, Mr. Ari, you can open your mic and then state your name and affiliation before speaking.
Okay, thank you for your opportunity, moderator. My name is Ariananta from TELU, and I have one question for Miss Kilya. Yeah, why did you only use 51 respondents? Is not that too small for SEMPLS? Yeah, I think for very small. So that's my question. Thank you.
I can answer this right now. Okay, maybe I will answer the question. Thank you, Mr. Ari, for the question. So the study was intentionally designed as a pretest, what I told before, not for the final study. The goal here was to validate and refine our measurement model, checking whether the indicators were valid and reliable before scaling up in PLSM. PLSM is actually well suited for smaller sample size during this explanatory phase. I acknowledge this as a limitation, so which is why our future research plan is to expand to at least 300 respondents for broader or wider validation. Thank you. Is that answering?
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Ari, because our time is up. Maybe if you have additional question, we encourage you to approach Ms. Helia in the big stage or the big room, right? Okay, so thank you, Ms. Helia, for your presentation. Let us now proceed to our next presenter. Please welcome to Mr. Stefanus Disono Pramata from Telkom University, who will present a paper titled Designing an Integrated Cyber Risk Mitigation Based on Zero Trust Architecture, a conceptual framework for the aerospace industry. For Mr. Stefanus, you have 10 minutes, place and room is yours.
Okay, check. Is my presentation show in screen?
Yes.
Okay, I will start. Good morning, honorable chairs, distinguished guests, and fellow researchers. My name is Stefanus Desano Pramatana from Telkom University. Today, I'm honored to present our research title, Designing an Integrated Cyber Risk Mitigation Based on Zero Trust Architecture, a conceptual framework for the aerospace industry. This study was co-authored with Widya Stasia Agustika Nutrisha and Data Praditya. Our presentation today is structured into 4 main sections. First, the introduction. Second, the methodology. Third, the result section. And finally, we will cover the conclusion and future work, where we map out our paradigm shift toward proactive security and a 3-stage empirical validation roadmap. Next is introduction. Let us begin with the context of our study. The aerospace industry is currently facing critical vulnerabilities driven by the convergence of corporate IT networks and operational technology or OT systems. Because of this convergence, high-value assets like ERP systems are now prime targets for state-sponsored advanced persistent threats. The core conflict is that traditional security relies heavily on static permissions and implicit trust. This paradigm has proven ineffective because it fails to contain lateral movement once the perimeter is breached. This creates a severe risk mitigation gap where high-level governance policies fail to translate into enforceable technical controls. Therefore, our research objective is to design an integrated risk mitigation framework that bridges this gap between strategy and technical implementation through dynamic orchestration. We achieve this by harmonizing the architecture of NIST SP 800 207, the governance of COVID 2019, and the risk and technical control of ISO/IEC 27005 and 27002. Next is methodology. To construct this framework, we utilize the design science research methodology divided into 4 phases. In phase 1, we establish a theoretical baseline by selecting NIST SP 800 to 107 for the architecture layer, COVID 2019 for the strategic layer, and ISO/IEC 27002 and 27005 for the operational layer and risk context. In phase 2, we map and synthesize these standards into a coherent 5-layer high-level design, directly aligning governance with operational execution. Phase 3 focuses on developing the cohesive workflow to target high-priority threats, generating the final conceptual framework. As this study focuses on the artifact design phase, empirical validation via expert judgment is established as future work in phase 4. Moving to the result, this is our proposed 5-layer zero trust defense model. At the top is the ZTA control plane, the brain that aggregates real-time telemetry to calculate dynamic risk scores and issue adaptive access decision. Surrounding the asset, we have the identity layer, which enforces strong PKE-based MFA and continuous device health check to mitigate identity threats. The application layer secures ERP interface by enforcing the principle of less privilege, a crucial element in the network layer. It enforces microsegmentation and explicit IT/OT boundary inspection to prevent ransomware and lateral movement. Finally, the infrastructure layer handles host isolation, while the data layer protects the crown jewels, sensitive ERP records, and CAD blueprints against state-sponsored espionage. We also specifically utilize microsegmentation to securely shield vulnerable legacy production equipment on the manufacturing floor. Now, how do we ensure that an automated technical action on the factory floor is completely justified by high-level governance? The answer lies in this structural harmonization matrix. We map our security components into three critical alignment focuses. First, proactive isolation, which correlates network telemetry collection with real-time risk response to halt lateral movement. Second, granular restriction, which minimizes the blast radius of a potential breach by evaluating and limiting user privilege strictly on a per session basis according to their current risk profile. And third, continuous verification, which drives a fundamental shift in risk strategy leveraging real-time threat intelligence and monitoring to enforce a strict never trust, always verify posture before triggering dynamic authentication. We operationalize that structural matrix into the dynamic response mechanism you see on the screen. Let's trace what happens when an access request is initiated toward a critical asset. First, the workflow triggers dynamic context evaluation. The system evaluates the request against the enterprise risk appetites and calculates a real-time trust score based on device health and external threats intelligence. Next, the request undergoes a network integrity check to ensure traffic cannot cross unauthorized logical boundaries. Finally, under governance and authorization, the system consults the asset's risk profile to verify data classification and check for any segregation of data conflict. This is where the automated decision is made. If the calculated trust score satisfies the threshold, granular per session access is granted under continuous monitoring. However, if any single parameter fails validation, the risk response protocol immediately blocks the request and isolates the network segmentation, neutralizing the threat before ERP integrity is compromised. To validate the logical utility of our framework, we conducted a simulation comparing its capabilities against traditional security baseline during a privilege escalation scenario. The contrast shown in the table is definitive. Under traditional security, privilege escalation is permitted because user roles are statically assigned and implicitly trusted inside the perimeter. Consequently, lateral movement remains completely undetected. Our proposed integrated framework completely rewrites this narrative by combining continuous dynamic risk profiling with segregation of data. The ZTI engine instantly detects the anomaly and blocks the escalation attempt in real time. Threats are immediately contained at the microsegmentation layer, successfully evolving our defense mechanism from reactive post-incident logging to proactive automated access revocation. Next is conclusion and future work. In conclusion, this study successfully mitigates IT/OT convergence vulnerabilities by integrating NIST, COVID 2019, and ISO 27002 standards, building a robust defense mechanism where traditional systems fail. We highlight a fundamental cybersecurity paradigm shift, leveraging ZTA to transform static mapping into proactive, automated, and context-aware orchestration. Our logical simulation demonstrates the framework's theoretical validity in detecting anomalies and preventing lateral movement on critical assets. However, we recognize that a conceptual framework must be operationally actionable. Therefore, our future work is dedicated to an empirical three-stage validation process within our case study organization. Stage 1 will deploy expert judgment using a 4-point Likert scale to quantitatively assess component relevance. Stage 2 will initiate focus group discussion with expert practitioners to qualitatively analyze any deficiencies and root causes. Finally, Stage 3 will execute participant validation to verify that our refined framework perfectly meets the rigorous operational requirement of a high-risk defense environment. And that's bring me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I'm very welcome for any question or feedback.
Okay, thank you for Mr. Jesano for your presentation. And once again, we will now open the floor for question. And for the audience, if you have a question, please raise your hand before speaking and kindly state your name and affiliation before asking your question. Okay, we have 3 questions here. I think our time is just enough for 2 questions. Okay. Okay, so for Miss Jopanka, maybe.
Okay, thank you to the moderator for the chance to speak. So my name is Jovanka Abigail from Telkom University. I have a question. Before that, found out that your proposed meeting you shifted the paradigm to work dynamic about ZTA framework, stop and incident threat did it differently than traditional VPN and role-based access control model.
Okay, Mr. Stefanus, you can answer it.
Okay, thank you, Miss Jovanka. The answer is conventional hybrid models using VPNs and static RBAC only verify the user once at the perimeter gate. Once inside, they blindly trust the session, which allows an attacker to escalate privilege undetected. Our ZTI framework utilizes continuous risk profiling and session integrity checks. Even if an attacker compromises a standard account, the moment they attempt to access confidential ERP assets, the ZTA Policy Engine instantly detects the segregation of datas violation and automatically revokes the session token, neutralizing the threat before lateral movement occurs. Is that clear, the answer, Miss Jovanka?
Yes, I think that is a clear answer. Thank you, that's all from me.
Okay, thank you for your answer, Mr. Stefanus. Okay, we move to our next question. Okay, for Mr. Daniel Sebastian, you can open your mic and state your name and affiliation before asking a question. Sorry, Mr. Daniel, your voice is still mute, maybe.
Okay, sorry. Can you? Okay. Thank you for floor and moderator. I'm Daniel Sebastian Saragi from Telkom University. I want to ask about what unique insight or phenomena did you discover that highlight the true value of this integration?
Okay, thank you for the question, Mr. Daniel Sebastian. The core uniqueness discovering during this integration is a critical assessment paradox when evaluating the organization's security posture solely from a strategic governance perspective using COBIT. The system demonstrates a relatively high capability level. However, when the exact same environment is cross-evaluated against in the Zero Trust Architecture Maturity Matrix, its technical maturity level is revealed to be surprisingly low. Remaining at the traditional stage, this phenomenon uncovers a dangerous risk mitigation gap where high-level governance compliance creates a false sense of security. Our framework unique value lies in exposing this misalignment through multidimensional cross-validation, ensuring technical execution objectively reflects strategic governance. And that's the answer, Mr. Daniel. Is it clear?
I think the answer it's clear. Thank you, Mr. Jesano.
Okay. Okay, thank you for the discussion. I think our time is up. Maybe for Mr. Ananta, if you have additional question for Mr. Stefanus, you can call him in the backstage or the back room. I'm sorry because our time is limited. Okay, so let us now proceed to our next presenter. We have to move to our next presenter. Please welcome to Mr. Muhammad Arifandi from Universitas Indonesia, who will present a paper titled Cybersecurity Assessment, Instruments for Government Institution in Indonesia. A warm round of applause for Mr. Muhammad Arifandi. You have 10 minutes, place and room is yours.
Okay, is my presentation already displayed? Okay, I will start my presentation. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present our research. My name is Muhammad Arifandi from the Department of Electrical Engineering, Universitas Indonesia, and this work is co-author with Professor Kalamul Ramli. The title of our paper is Cybersecurity Assessment Instrument for Government Institution in Indonesia. And we will jump to the introduction. Digital transformation is no longer optional for organizations. It has become a necessity, including for government institutions. However, as digitalization increases, cybersecurity has become a major concern both for government and private sectors. And then based on the SOC Radar Indonesia Regional Threat Landscape Report, the public administration sector has become one of most targeted sectors for dark web exposure, indicating that government data and credentials are specifically targeted. And then there are indications of espionage activity by the APT group known as APT-WINTI suspected at targeting Indonesia. We also see the real evidence of this risk. There is a data loss incident at one of government institution in Indonesia, which is Directorate General of Corrections under the Ministry of Immigration and Corrections of Indonesia, where at least 30 information security incidents were recorded. And then because of these numerous threats, it becomes very important for government institutions to assess their capability cybersecurity. An assessment instrument is needed as a tool to systematically evaluate this capability. Then currently, the Indonesia government already has cybersecurity assessment instrument regulated under Regulation Number 10 of 2023 of National Cyber and Crypto Agency, or we call BSSN. However, this instrument is descriptive in nature, meaning it only measures in the current maturity level. Interestingly, Article 4, Paragraph 5 of this regulation actually allows institutions to develop other instruments as long as they still refer to the framework established by BSSN. And then this brings us to our core problem statement that the assessment instrument only provides a maturity score and is not yet able to offer improvement recommendation based on the conditions of each institution. About the research contribution, the first is developing a cybersecurity assessment instrument with prescriptive purpose that adopt a norm-schematic approach. Second is synthesizing 352 security controls for several cybersecurity frameworks, and then testing and validating at 4 government institutions in Indonesia. And then here the method. For the method, our research follow the BRAIN approach, which consists of several stages. But in this research, we adopt 4 of the first stage, which are scoping until testing. For the scoping, the objective is the unit within this institution that is responsible for ICT or information security, and then we define the framework, which are NIST CSF 2.0, ISO 27022, and then the syscontrols version 8.1. And then for the design, we determine the purpose of the instrument, which is prescriptive. This means the instrument requires 3 types of data inputs, which are maturity score, target score, and then priority score. And then about the application method, we determine self-assessment, so government institutions can conduct the evaluation by themselves without needing external assessors. And then for the populate, we synthesize the security controls from the 3 frameworks. To do this, we use a MISI approach, or mutually exclusive or collectively exhaustive, to integrate security controls that share the same objectives, process, and supporting evidence, so that there is no overlap or nothing security control is missed. And then for the testing, we validate the instrument across 5 aspects. From content validity to comparison with existing instrument. For the content validity, we conducted with dichotomous scale, and then for the second and until fourth aspect, we conducted with Likert scale, and then for the comparison with existing instrument, we directly compare the proposed instrument to the existing instrument. And then here the design, we use the CMM model to examine the capability of cybersecurity implementation. It use when to input data from maturity score and the target score, and then we also use CMM to defining the organizational maturity level. Here the CMM scale from level 1 to level 5, and then we also use the Likert scale to input the priority score, ranging from not important at all to very important. We also represent score for each maturity from level 1 to level 5. And then here the formula. For the formula, we use the averaging or mean, the sum of the score of each security controls divided by the number of the security control. And then about the mapping the score to maturity level organization, we use the ISACA approach. For the level 1, the achievement is below 15%. So the score is from 0 until less than 1.70, and then to level 5, the achievement is more than 85%. So the score is 4.71 until 5. And then the core of our prescriptive approach is the norm strategy matrix. This matrix combines the priority score with the implementation gap score, which is the difference between the target score and the current maturity score, to produce 4 strategy quadrant. The strategy quadrant is the improvement recommendation. There are 4 quadrant. The first quadrant is prioritas utama. It has high priority score and low implementation gap score. All the security controls in this quadrant are easy and quick to implement. The second quadrant is initiative strategies. It has high priority score and high implementation gap score. All the security controls in this quadrant are recommended to be implemented immediately. And then the third quadrant is low priority score and low implementation gap score. Although security controls in this quadrant are not priority, they tend to be quick to implement because they don't take much time to implement. And then the last quadrant is prioritas rendah. It has low priority score and high implementation gap score. The security controls in this quadrant are considered last because they are difficult or to take a very long time to implement. There are certain conditions where if the gap data has a negative score, then the security control is automatically placed in this quadrant. And then here the result. Our proposed instrument, which consists of 6 domains and 68 security controls synthesized from the initial 352 controls, was tested and validated at 4 government institutions in Indonesia. There are 3 central government and then 1 regional government. The respondents were team leader and team members directly involved in cybersecurity with work experience ranging from 5 years up to more than 20 years. For the confidentiality, the names of the institutions and respondents have been anonymized. And then next, here the result of testing and validation. The figure on the left is the testing and validation result from 4 government institutions. Our proposed method get the content validity is 99.45, and then the respondent strongly agree about 3 aspects, which are feasibility of the assessment instrument structure, user experience, and then suitability of maturity level and the resulting improvement recommendations. And then for the last aspect, which is comparison with the existing instrument, we get 3 government institutions get score higher when assessed with our proposed instrument, and 1 government institution get a lower score. For the 1 government instrument that get a lower score, we analyze deeply. We get that they conducted assessment annually by a third party, and then they have a limited time, so not all the controls are reassessed. And then all the respondents compare that our proposed instrument is easier to complete compared to the existing instrument. There are too many indicators which sometimes overlap and are difficult to assess objectively. And here the discussion. For the discussion, this instrument can assist institutions in prioritizing improvement initiatives according to the organizational urgency and implementation gaps. This instrument enables institutions to make informed decisions on where to allocate limited resource rather than applying a one-size-fits-all remediation strategy. The instrument may also be adapted for other sectors or public organizations in different countries, as the instrument is fundamentally based on flexibility cybersecurity frameworks. And then about the limitation, the instrument was specifically designed for Indonesian government institutions with its foundational structure aligned to local regulation, meaning that direct adoption in other regulatory environments would require contextual adjustment. And then the instrument is currently available only in a worksheet-based format, which may limit its scalability. The prioritization mechanism depends on subjective assessment made by each institution. And about the conclusion, this research proposed a cybersecurity assessment instrument for government institutions in Indonesia. This instrument is present as a worksheet that has 6 domains and has a total 68 security control. And then for the future research, we suggest that to explore other approach besides the non-strategic metrics. And then I would like to acknowledge the support from the Educational Fund Management Institution, which is Ministry of Finance Indonesia or LPDP, for granting the scholarship. And thank you. Here the reference. Okay, that concludes of our presentation. I would like to receive the question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for Mr. Muhammad for your presentation, and we will now open for Q&A session. So if the audience have an interest with this topic, you can ask to Mr. Muhammad. Okay. Okay, anyone here want to ask a question to Mr. Muhammad? Okay, Mr. So if there's no question from the audience, maybe I have a question for you, Mr. So considering the rapid evolution of cyber threats, how can an assessment instrument remain relevant and effective over time without requiring frequent redesign?
Okay, thank you for the question. And then my answer is according to my research, my research is reference with 3 different cybersecurity frameworks. They need to be updated day by day. So I think my instrument is still need to be redesigned if the security control from the framework get updated. So for the next, I think it is still to update if there is a update from the framework, I think.
So what's the continual improvement that you must be next in the future next?
Okay, the continual improvement. The first thing first is to update about the cybersecurity framework. I mean, we need to see the current update from the security framework because this instrument, this proposed instrument, is reference the 3 cybersecurity framework. Yeah. So and then I think the next improvement that can be conducted to this proposed instrument is to make the other improvement in prescriptive approach, which is the improvement can based on the risk base of the risk profile of the organization. So the improvement of the recommendation is not only from subjective of the respondent of the user of from this instrument. Yeah, I think that's my answer.
Okay, thank you for your answer, Mr. Muhammad. I think you can close your slide and end your presentation right now. Thank you for
Okay,
your
thank you.
Mr. Muhammad. Okay, so we have to move to our last presenter. That is Mr. Rahmat Fauzi from Telkom University, who will present a paper titled Empirical Validation of an Integrated Adoption Model for Maternal Health Application Among Rural Pregnant Women in Indonesia. For Mr. Rahmat Fauzi, you have 10 minutes. Please, and time is yours.
Okay, is it available? Presentation, my presentation.
Yes, of course, Mr.
Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone and all participants each day's conference. Thank you for your attending. Let me introduce myself. My name is Rahmat Fauzi. Today, I will present our research with the title Empirical Validation of Integrated Adoption Model for Maternal Health Application Among Rural Pregnant Women in Indonesia. This study is collaborative research between Telkom University and Gadjah Mada University. With my co-promoter is Mrs. Dr. Adisja Erna Permanasari and Dr. Silmi Fauziati. Okay, to guide our discussion, our presentation is divided into four main sections. The firstly is introduction, the secondly is method, the third is result and discussion, and the last is the conclusion. Okay, let's begin. Let's start with the context. Maternal healthcare in Indonesia is face a massive challenge. For our maternal mortality rate is remain high, about 305 death per 100,000 live birth according to Suparji research. And uh, and also the critical challenge, another critical challenge is mostly about 40% Indonesia population is reside in rural area. It's recording to Bapenas. And then, according to research by Ebenso et al., why is rural area is matter? The firstly is geographical isolation, and the secondly is connectivity gaps, and the third is provider scarcity, and the fourth is community mediate decision. And then the gap of this existing adoption framework mostly um, mostly mHealth adoption studies focus on urban user. Rural area or rural pregnant women are heavily underrepresented. It's from the previous research. It's according to Khan et al. The secondly gap is rural specific variable is overlooked because it's variable like digital literacy constraint, cultural pregnancy norm, trust in local actor are rarely integrated into unified adoption framework. And the third is behavior to design gap transaction missing. Most research gap stop at identifying behavior. Very few studies translate this behavior insight into the concrete guideline for application developer and software architect. So, this study, we have objective study to develop and empirical validate the measurement model for an integrated model adoption framework, combine time model construct with four rural relevant construct. And then the contribution of the IT, this research is the firstly is the for validate measurement instrument, and the secondly is evidence-based design priorities, and the third is foundation for technical guideline. To address this gap, we developed an integrated framework we took the core standard of TAM, Technology Acceptance Model. This is founded by Mrs. Davis. The core is perceived usefulness, perceived is of use, attitude variable, and intention to use. For this research, we add the several relevant variable. It's relevant into the rural area respondent. The firstly, we use health consciousness. The secondly is use perceive health risk. The third is use perceive value. The fourth is use social influence. It's a variable from the UTAUT. So after we combine the model, we propose the new model combine time and variable antecedent. So if you can see at the screen, the core model is time is the in the middle, and the variable is social influence, perceived health risk, perceived value, and health consciousness. And then the next session is we get in methodology. In this methodology of research, we follow it 4 steps. The firstly is identification. For the first step, firstly we read the literature, existing literature via Scopus, Web of Science, and IEEE Access, and then we obsess with the stakeholder like midwife, and then after we read the literature and observation, we then conceptual the model with the 8 constructs, and then after the identification, the secondly is we gather the data, we collect the data, but before we collect data, we develop the instrument design for the question and for question and questionnaire for the and the content validity for the question. After that, we gather data and we get about 125 across 28 province in Indonesia online questionnaire via Google Form with Scala Likert for Scala Likert. And then after data is collection, we analyze data using SAMPLS and SmartPLS. And then after analyze, we use decision making for the data. And for the result and discussion, this is the respondent profile we get from the Indonesia. We have 125 pregnant women survey. Majority the education of the respondent is nearly 50% is respondent is get senior high school or below, and about 83% mostly the income of the respondent is below 5 million rupiah, and the most occupation of the respondent is housewife. After we get the respondent, we evaluated the model using SmartPLS. We evaluate the outer model, the firstly internal consistency like Crunchband alpha and composite reliability, and then convergent validity with average variance SRAT. It's according to research by Haier. And then we evaluate discriminant validity using Fornalecker and HTMT ratio is according to Henseler and Fornalecker research. And the result of the construct, we have construct 8 from attitude, health consciousness, intention to use, perceive is of use, perceive health risk, perceive usefulness, perceive value, and social influence. All construct have all passes, which Crunchband alpha, composite reliability, and average is all construct is a pass according to Haier and Fornalecker and Henseler. after we analyze in reliability and convergent validity, we analyze in HTMT ratio. The goal of this test is we want to ensure that every factor like social influence, perceived value, or attitude or health consciousness is truly standalone, doesn't get mixed with the other variable. So after we analyze with Smart PLS, all factor is separately clean. But however, we found that one measure between health consciousness and PHR, perceived health risk, maybe it's the value is sorry, the value is very low, but it's no problem. Maybe this might be for pregnant woman in rural area, uh, between health consciousness and perceived pregnancy is might be overlap the question. And then for substantive insight from the result, for the measurement model that we propose is robust, and the secondly is health consciousness and PHR is unified orientation, and the third social influence empirical distinct, and the fourth perceived value bridge usability intention. And maybe uh, maybe for the limitation and the future work, the limitation of the research is cross-sectional design. It's okay, and the requirement selection bias and single cost self-report. And then for the future research, maybe structural model testing like PET coefficiency, R-square, Q-square, hypothesis testing. It will be analyzed in the next agenda of research. And maybe we can cross-study comparison for the model. We can gather data for the another countries like Vietnam, Philippines, or Bangladesh or Africa. And remember for this work is the first one is the validated instrument for rural maternal health that we propose is validate. And the secondly is empirical pattern translate into design. And for the third is foundation. Maybe this research is become the foundation for the next research. Maybe enough for me for the presentation our research. Thank you very much for your attendance, and we looking forward for your question. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rahmat Fauji, for that insightful presentation. And again, we will now open for Q&A session for audience here. If you have an interest with this topic, you can ask to Mr. Rahmat Fauji for a question. Okay. Okay, I think there's no question from the audience, Mr.
Okay, no problem.
Maybe I have a question for you.
Okay, now.
Okay, Mr. Based on your empirical validation, what the factors emerge as the strongest predictor of maternal health application adoption among rural pregnant women, and what practical implication does this have for developers and healthcare providers?
Okay, maybe for the highest factor for this research is health consciousness. Health consciousness is the value is very high because respondent or pregnant woman in rural area is very need about the health consciousness. They need about health awareness, health literacy about the health because they need about pregnant. Yeah, maybe that is the highest variable we found for this research.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Maybe one more questions.
Okay.
What is the added value of integrating multiple adoption theories into a single model compared to using a standalone technology adoption framework?
Maybe for the framework, we use TAM and TAM model from Davis, and we add several variable like social influence, perceived health risk, perceived value, and health consciousness. This is the new purpose because it's very rarely in literature from IEEE, from Science Direct, from Web of Science. It's discussed about the rural area, especially for pregnant women. But in the future, we propose another model, use UTAUT and several and extend the variable. Maybe that's Mr. Hilda.
Okay, thank you for your answer, Mr. Rahmat Fauji, for your best answer. Now you can close your presentation and
Okay.
end this slide. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for all for the attention.
Okay, so I think our session it's enough. Ladies and gentlemen, this conclude the parallel session on behalf of Each 2026. I would like to thank all our presenters for their exceptional contribution and insight. And I would also like to extend my gratitude to all participants for their engagement and thought-provoking questions. We hope this session has been both informative and inspiring. So before we end this session and left this room, let us to take a photo for documentation. So for all presenters, give your the best pose. Maybe I will take a screenshot or a photo. Okay. Oh, wait. Okay. Open your camera and give the best pose. I will take a screenshot. Okay, enough. Thank you for all presenters and have a nice day. Or
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Hilda.
okay, thank you.
Thank you
Anytime.
very much, Mr. Hilda.
Yes, anytime.